The Dow Award has been a symbol of excellence in the world of research within the discipline of technical analysis for years now, since its inception. And this year's winner, Alex Spiroglou, is yet another stellar addition to this lineup of wonderful researchers who've done some cutting edge work in technical analysis. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Alex, and we'll have a little conversation about just your process of going through the paper and a few comments before and after that. So, Alex, let's start with your relationship with the CMT Association. Can you tell us about how you got to know and how you've been involved with the CMT Association over your career?
Yes, yes. Well, my relationship with the CMT Association, actually, the first time I became a member was in 2010. But in an awkward kind of way, my relationship started before that. And actually, I was a member of an email list called the Markets List, which was hosted by John Bollinger. It was like a discussion forum. It's still active. And through that, I got to meet quite a few technicians, send a few posts, contribute a little bit. And through that, I met John Bollinger. And after we started discussing, markets through that list. After a little while, some months ago, after that, John sent me an email, and he said that he would be in London because he was invited to do a presentation for Technical Analyst magazine. They had a conference. They used to have an annual conference, and John was invited as a keynote speaker. So he sent me an email around that time and said, "Look, I'm in town. Let's go for a beer. Let's meet in person." So I went there. We met in person. Actually, funnily enough, I still have a photo of that meeting. And little did I know that after a few months after that, he sent me an email and said, "Look, we are setting up a chapter we're thinking of setting up a chapter in London, and I would like you to nominate you for that one. And let me know if you're in." And I said, "Yeah, that would be an honor. Let's do this." So the whole thing was organized. There was interview, if you will. Ralph Acampora came to London. We had a chat. From what I understand, there were another probably 2 to 3 or 4 nominees, other candidates for the London chapter. So we had a good discussion with Ralph, and we had a big event in September 2010 for the inaugural meeting of the announcement of there will be setting up a chapter in London. I was announced as the chapter chair, and that was the beginning of my relationship with the then MTA Association, now CMT. And John and Ralph put me on the map, if you will, from that point of view.
Wonderful, Alex. Thank you so much. And once again, let me congratulate you for winning the 2022 Dow Award. I'd love to understand a bit more about your process of writing the paper. How did you go about it? Tell us about the topic and how you came about to write this paper.
Well, the topic was actually started again. It was a research. Actually, I wasn't meant to write the paper. It started probably, would say, 2014 or 15. Well, because at that time I was first of all, let me say that I'm a big proponent in creating taxonomy tables, because there are a lot of indicators who say pretty much the same thing. There is a lot of creative minds in technical analysis, but I'm a big believer of using almost like one tool for each thing you want to do, like one momentum indicator, one trend indicator, and so on and so forth. So at that time, I was using heavily the RSI and the rate of change indicator. The RSI, because it was a bounded oscillator, it had its advantages of having uniform readings across time, uniform readings across securities, having overbought, oversold readings, but the problem with it was that it was getting pegged at high levels during strong uptrends, or at low levels during strong downtrends. And thus I was also using a boundless indicator, which was the rate of change, which solved these issues, but the expense that sometimes the readings were not strictly comparable because of volatilities from various securities, and of course there were no overbought, oversold readings which would be transferable from one security to the next. So although these tools are very, very useful, I always thought, it would be neat, it would be nice if we could have an indicator which combined both attributes, both the advantages of the RSI or any kind of range band oscillator, and a trend following indicator. So the best of two worlds, and what you would also have readings would be uniform across securities. It would have overbought, oversold levels as well, and it would be free to expand, if you will, to the upside or to the downside, adjusting itself to market momentum. And I was basically on a quest to find an indicator that could combine these, and I started experimenting with the MACD. But when I started seeing a bit more about its functions and its characteristics, I saw that there were 5 issues, 5 challenges with it. And my initial study was, how can I solve these? I mean, obviously the first point to try to improve it would be the PPO, the percent price oscillator. You normalize it by price. But although it solved some issues, it didn't solve some others. So I tried various solutions, and the one I came up with was to normalize it by volatility. And then I started, I won't go into the details of the paper. I don't want to be boring you with the details. So I started studying it and its properties and how it can be improved even more. So by 2015, I had done the work that you see right now as presented in the paper. From that point on, I did have done a lot more work on it in terms of pattern recognition. So that's how it started, and what you're seeing right now in terms of the paper is my 2015 work.
Thank you, Alex. So you can talk us through the background of how you came about to to kind of write the paper and the work that you've done. But if I were to ask you to condense it into maybe a problem statement, what would you say were the market questions that you were trying to specifically solve through the paper?
Yep. Well, the market questions I was trying to solve was, A, how can I take the MACD and have it have uniform, because it's an absolute price indicator. So how can I make it relative so it can be uniform across time for each security? The second issue is, how can I make it uniform across securities? And the third one would be, how can I create, now that I've created uniformity across time and securities, how can I create a momentum life cycle model? The fourth issue would be to work on the signal line. How can I improve its timing and its accuracy? So these were the 4 issues I was trying to solve, and 3 of these I've tackled in the paper.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. And that gives a lot of color as well to anyone who's trying to look at the market and to identify where there might be challenges, where research opportunities exist. So I'd love to also understand, I guess this is for the benefit of future authors who will compete for the Dow Award. And like I mentioned, it represents the highest level of research and thought into the advancing the discipline of technical analysis. Mm-hmm. So what advice do you have for future authors who would like to participate and compete for the Dow Award?
That's a very good question. The answer, I think, at least my answer to this would be, try to write as if you would be the only person reading that report. Don't write it for the sake of writing it. Write for the sake of using it. So try to think in context of, how can I produce some kind of research which I won't care about publishing, but I will care about using and try to make it as practical as possible, not academic, which is might make it theoretically valid, but practically sometimes of research are not applicable in real life market applications. For example, you see sometimes studies that provide diversification across 500 types of securities, but it's sometimes the execution costs come in and other assumptions are not really valid. So they're okay from a theoretical point of view, but practically from an application, from a trading or investing point of view, they're not that useful.
Thank you so much, Alex. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that emphasis on practice and usability is something that future contributors to the DAO Awards can really take away from your comments. I'd love to ask you a little more about the CMT Association, Alex, and your vision for the CMT Association, the future, the growth that you see around you.
Well, the CMT Association. First of all, I would like to say that I have absolute faith in the leadership of the CMT Association. I've been very privileged to be a member across probably four presidents for the CMT Association, and all of them had significant contribution. They've done wonderful work, and I'm sure this will go on in the future, both for the leadership, also for the staff such as you or Tyler and Barbara, and also the volunteers. But I think as far as growth is concerned, the main thing I would point out is to adapt. Let me digress here. Okay, this is a personal assumption. Of course, I could be always wrong or be corrected. But I think we're going through what I call sometimes jokingly the fourth wave of evolution of technical analysis. And by that I mean throughout history there have been technological changes which have impacted, which had a ripple effect. I was like a stone thrown in water, and that create ripple effects across the real economy. Firstly, then financial markets. Secondly, and then technical analysis, and lastly would be probably the association. So let me give you an example. So if you say the first wave, if you will began probably in the 18th century, when we had the transportations, steam power and railroads, which caused that was like the then technological innovation, the steam power and the railways that increased commerce, and that increased business. Then we started seeing some innovation or ripple effect in financial services when we started seeing the getting the setting up of stock exchanges. And I think that was really from the stock exchanges when we went to the creation of indices, and that provided an environment for technical analysis to flourish. And we had the Dow theory, which was the foundation, the forefather of technical analysis. We saw Hamilton, Rias, and pattern recognition, Richard Schabacker, W.T. Gunn, and so on and so forth. This was the initial the foundations of modern technical analysis. So I would probably say that lasted up until the 1960s. Again, it's my own personal definition. I don't represent the association in this, but I would say that would be probably the foundational phase. The second phase would be probably from the 60s till the 80s, and then some other technological innovations came in. For example, the birth of the internet, where we started using the use of computers for the data manipulation, and that affected the financial services industry, and that also affected the technical analysis community. For example, I've read interviews where people like Perry Kaufman he worked with aerospace engineers from RAND or TRW, or Larry Williams recalled doing backtesting strategies using punch cards, probably in the 60s, mid 60s. and or from then on, probably in the 70s, Richard Donchian first published his 4-week rule, which was, I think, was optimized with, at that time, considered powerful machines. So we started seeing some manipulation in the data, indicators, probably the golden era of technical analysis as far as innovation was concerned. We had the MACD, since we're talking about it for the award, in the 70s. We had then work on volatility with, of course, none other than John Bollinger, and so on and so forth. But also we had the birth of the CMT Association in the early 1970s. Then the CMT Association, MTA at that time, also housed its library in the New York Institute of Finance. 10 years after that, we had the designation, which again, we had this ripple effect starting from technology to real economy, financial markets, and then technical analysis. So I would say probably that's the second wave. Then we had the third wave, which is in the 1980s to 2010, if you will. I had the mobile phone networks in the early 1980s, increased computing power, more widespread use of personal computers. 1980s, I think it was when Bill and Ralph Cruz created Omega Research, now known as TradeStation. So the individual investors had more data power, data crunching power. Also, the mobile phone and telecommunications basically created globalization of financial markets. Eventually, we went from floor to screen trading, electronic trading, and that also had a ripple effect on technical analysis itself. We saw new forms of technical analysis with intermarket analysis. John Murphy and, of course, Martin Pring, one of my favorites. Technical analysis started becoming more widely accepted, primarily through its presence. The CMT Association, MTA at that time, was helping a lot, spread the technical gospel. Of course, behavioral finance, the emergence of behavioral finance also helped validate a lot of the assumptions, the underlying assumptions of technical analysis. And of course, there was more rigorous quantification of the assumptions of technical analysis. And then again, we saw this, the adaptation by the association when, in March 2005, the Securities and Exchange Commission amended Rule 344. So that was the third phase, and I think we're going through the fourth phase right now, when times have changed. I mean, the principles as they change, they're the same, but the interest is changing. I mean, we see the advent of big data, machine learning, all of that, officially started probably in the 60s by Arthur Samuel. But the point is that we go into blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. We have more increased data crunching power, with cloud computing. That had a ripple effect on the industry itself changed by going into 24-hour markets, seamless markets, as far as futures is concerned. And technical analysis again is changing it again. There is a more of a rigorous analytical methods. I mean, there will be some data challenges from the 24-hour markets, having the definitions of what's an open, what's a close right now. And of course, again, that had a ripple effect, more demand onto the association itself, seeing expansion into Asia. And also there is a morphing into the industry itself. I mean, the development and the delivery of brokerage research is changing. So there is different consumers and different producers of technical analysis. So I think that the challenge going forward will be how to maneuver, if you will, the association in a direction which will be more aligned to the changing environment. I mean, the technical analysis principles itself will or like, they will stay the same. I mean, more people will contribute into the body of knowledge, but as a professional association, there might be some adaptations into the changing environment of the whole industry itself.
Wonderful, Alex. And I really love the way you've characterized these four waves. And with your permission, I'd love to use it in my future conversations about technical analysis as well.
To tell you the truth, I was actually thinking of writing an article about it, and elaborating more about this. But I think it's not so much I think the important point is to realize that there is an evolutional process, because if you know where you're coming from, it's easier to see where you're headed.
Absolutely, Alex. And I would strongly encourage you to write the article as well. So I'd love to maybe in future go and introduce this idea to people as Alex Spiroglou's four waves of technical analysis. But thank you so much for that. And actually, with that, speaking of introducing technical analysis, what advice would you have for young students and early career professionals of today who want to learn technical analysis and maybe even build their careers down this discipline? Especially because you mentioned in the context of this fourth wave, what can they do to prepare themselves best for what lies ahead of them?
Well, the first thing I would say probably that the foundational principles of technical analysis are relevant today, and I think they will be relevant even in the future, because human psychology and human nature and mass, as an individual basis, are relatively constant. We may change on a personal basis, but as groups there is little variability in human psychology. So I would say they can feel safe or certain that the foundational principles of technical analysis will be relevant in the future. They won't be investing in something that may change as a whole. I mean, secondly, I would say they should be feeling blessed to have an association which they can rely upon as a networking tool, as having a wonderful body of knowledge, something that was pretty much unheard of like 50 years ago. They can pursue their certification, and the certification has multiple benefits. Of course, at the end of it, you have something to show for your work, but it also adds structure, and it's also like a study roadmap. So instead of going from one book to the next, you can follow the structure and the manuals for the exam itself, and it can organize your thoughts and your work. So it's a very valuable tool. The third thing I would say is probably that although technical analysis itself is absolutely relevant and necessary risk management tool, I would say that the industry itself has changed. The buy side is a lot more quantitative and data driven and evidence based. You can't rely, simply on the Edwards and McGee material. So in addition to that, someone, at least as far as getting a job, securing a job on the buy side of the industry, they would probably need to complement that with probably the knowledge of a programming language like Python or C++, or at the very least something with one of the commercially available technical analysis and trading platforms like AFL from Army Broker or Easy Language from TradeStation and so on and so forth. So a programming language, and also ideally compare that with quantitative knowledge, how to test and design a trading system. Even if someone doesn't plan on trading or using it on a fully systematic basis, it would be very valuable to produce some kind of a numerical evidence for your trading ideas to your colleagues and employers, and even to yourself. So that would be the third thing. And the fourth thing is do this if you really love it. And it's necessary to follow your passion. or as the ancient Greek philosopher said, Socrates, education is the kindling of a flame. It's not the filling of a vessel. Don't learn just for the sake of learning. If you're really passionate about it, follow your heart, and it would lead you to your dreams.
Thank you so much, Alex. And what a beautiful note and thought to end this on, the kindling of a flame. So I really hope that this conversation with you as well kindles among anyone listening to this the desire to kind of dive deeper into the world of technical analysis, whether they are young and starting out or whether they're experienced and want to get more and more, get deeper into the discipline. So wonderful, Alex. Thank you so much. I so wish you could have been with us in person for this year's symposium, but
I wish that too.
indeed, Alex, you were saying?
No, yes, I wish I was out there with you to meet new people and also see my old CMT Association friends. And a special thanks to all the people that have made the symposium, brought it to fruition this year, because it's been a tough 2 years. You, Tyler, Barbara, the people at the board, and also I would like to thank again the people that have really changed my life on a professional basis. That would be John Bollinger and Ralph Acampora, and also the people that have helped me shape, influenced me from a professional basis, which that would be Martin Prink, Larry Williams, and Tom DeMark. These 5 people have played an important role in my life, in my professional life. I'm glad to have known them in person, and I'm hoping that through continued work, and maybe this paper can help someone else's life in the future as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm confident that you will be at the next symposium in 2023, which in fact will be the 50th anniversary of the incorporation of the CMT Association, then the MTA. But it's going to be an especially magnificent symposium. I'm very confident.
I'm sure it
Thank
is.
you so much once again, Alex, for your time, for your efforts, and for having been such a strong advocate for technical analysis.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much.